World Financial Group offers entrepreneurs from all backgrounds the opportunity to start their own business on a level playing field. Dr. Yana Woodhouse, receiving the WCM Wall Street Pioneer Award by the United Black Wall Street of America, Inc., is one of those entrepreneurs.
I see WFG and TFA as a place where African Americans with an entrepreneurial mindset can flourish. And the bonus, we help families and serve the communities across the country.
To learn more about us, go to worldfinancialgroup.com.
We are the sons and daughters of the soul. We are resilient and forever forward-thinking. We ask for nothing else than the opportunity to live and to create the lives that we were meant to live. We want nothing but an equal chance at options and possibilities. The same possibilities and options to live out our potential as our fellow man. We want to be heard, understood, and expressive in our reality. We are the future. We are the creative. We are here.
This is Kia Rogers, and you're listening to Urbanology with my dad, Tony Rogers, on WHCR 90.3 FM New York.
Good afternoon. This is Tony Rogers, your host for Urbanology, the Art of War. I hope all is well. It's been some time since we have been on board. I miss you guys, but we're back, and there's a lot going on. There's a number of things happening. I'll give a few updates. I was trying to have my good friend Regi Taylor on. I'm not sure, there was some technical difficulties there, and he wasn't able to get in. Maybe that might change before the end of the show. If not, we'll have a short show. I will just give some updates. I know that there's a couple of things. I'm just going to text. We might be able to get Regi on. But before that, there are some updates that I need to make. Of course, this is Marathon Week. And on Sunday, November the 2nd, Harlem Mile will continue. Actually, Harlem Marathon Week in Harlem started at the beginning of the week on Monday, and there was a nice event at the Renaissance Hotel, and a number of people came out. But there's a tradition every marathon based on the relationship that the Greater Harlem Chamber of Commerce has had with the New York City, and when Percy Sutton was the borough president, it was almost like the mayor many years ago, and when he created the New York City marathon, he was able to develop a way to create and make that a major tourism activity. And actually, his whole platform is on tourism, which is one of the things that has continued, whether it's Harlem Day or Harlem Week, which he actually started as Harlem Day, and and uh, and the marathon, and we have continued that relationship. And on the second, there will be viewing on Fifth Avenue uh, between 125th, 124th, I would say, and 100. Well, along Fifth Avenue, I should put it that way, because we have some stages. As soon as the runners come off the bridge, I believe at 149th Street, we call it the Harlem Mile. Between 149th Street, there will be entertainment. On 125th Street and Fifth Avenue, there will be entertainment. And on 121st Street, there will be a main stage in Fifth Avenue where there will be entertainment. And then there will be entertainment around 116th Street. And you can go to the Greater Harlem Chamber of Commerce's website and get information as to who's going to perform and what's going to take place there. If you are watching this and you would like to be a guest at the Chamber's VIP tent, text me at 917-821-7099 or send an email to urbanologysystems@gmail.com or the Harlem Tourism Board at gmail.com with your name, and I'll put you on the VIP list based on you being a valued listener to the Soul City Urbanology show that takes place every Tuesday. So that's one of the things. And of course, there's a lot of Halloween activities that will take place. Again, you can check with the chamber for that, but I do know that the state office building usually has a Harlem-ween activity. Jackie Rowe Adams, who is a good friend, and you can check the chamber for her Halloween party, great for kids. And I believe a new thing on 12th Avenue, under the viaduct there will be another celebration for Halloween for those who celebrate. It's going to be on a Friday, so I'm sure that a number of people will come out. But again, there are a number of things. Each week we'll talk about the new activities that are taking place, the new openings that will take place, especially in November going into December. And hopefully, if you're interested in going to Ghana, you have actually 2 more days, because after November, the prices go up because everyone who is in the know tried to get to Ghana during December. There's so many different activities, but we're in the north, and we have a festival that we produce every year. Matter of fact, probably another show, because I want to bring Regi on. I have to talk to you about, since the last time I've been on, I am now a chief. My name is Manwule Wua, and I am a chief of a village in northern Ghana, Manwule, the village of Manwule. So we'll talk a little bit about that. I still haven't wrapped my head around as to what all of that means, but I do know that I have a village and I have some land that I can build on, and I look forward to seeing it when I get to Ghana in the north during December. So that's another story we'll talk about. But for now, many of you have seen some of my articles about Regi Taylor, who is an author, historian. Um, he is an incredible guy, has a lot of information, has done a lot of research. He was part of our cultural tourism summit that we had during Harlem Week, and he was talking about his campaign to reclaim the Big Apple name that basically stems from Harlem, and there's a whole story about how it got to become the branding for New York City, which came out of Harlem, to try to take that back. And there's a new project that he's working on, the Green Apple Guide. So I thought that I would allow for him to talk about that and let people who may be interested understand how they can get involved. So please give a warm welcome to Reggie Taylor.
Hello, Tony. Thank you.
Hey, hey, brother, how you doing?
I'm doing fine. Thanks for inviting me. And hello, Harlem. Yes, as Tony said, I have a lot to share. We have a new publication that we're doing for the Harlem Tourism Board, the Green Apple Guide, that follows in the tradition of a Harlemite nearly 90 years ago, Victor Hugo Green, who many of you may have heard developed the Green Book, which was a book that helped people of color in automobiles visit areas that may have been hostile during the Jim Crow era, to make sure that they were safe and make sure they had accommodations. So we thought, as a Harlem Tourism Board, we could adopt that philosophy and build on it to build our program for tourism in Harlem.
Well, one of the things that I know that we're looking to do is to do this in the name of actually, there's a birthday. He has a birthday in November, right?
We actually just missed his birthday by a few days. His birthday was actually, he does have a birthday. I'm sorry. We just missed the date of his death last month, October 16th. And he does have a birthday coming up. I believe it's November the 11th. Victor Hugo Green was born and raised in Harlem, and made quite a contribution that we're building upon at the Harlem Tourism Board for people who travel with Harlem as their destination.
And when we talk about the Green Apple magazine, let some of the newer listeners have a brief understanding about the research you did about the Big Apple and why Harlem has reclaimed that name as the birthplace of the Big Apple.
Yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, one of the drivers behind the idea to develop the Green Apple Guide, in accordance with what Victor Hugo Green did for Black travelers, is to expound on the program that we have at the Harlem Tourism Board regarding the origin of the Big Apple. The Big Apple, the term, the nickname, the Big Apple, is actually organic Harlem slang that began in Harlem, that was exclusively used among Black folk to describe New York City, which in their time was Harlem. Their world, their New York City was Harlem because of the Jim Crow era. And it was actually Cab Calloway, who at the time was the master of ceremonies at the Cotton Club in the late 1930s, who actually developed a glossary of slang terms. And in that book of slang terms, probably more than 200 slang terms that were exclusively used by Black folks in our communication. He actually, for the first time, defined New York as the Big Apple in print. And because it was during World War II, start of World War II, many of the soldiers who followed his career, who were scattered about the world, in missions in Europe and North Africa and other parts of the world, actually bought the dictionary and shared it with the other soldiers and people in the towns and cities where they were stationed. And that's how the terminology, the Big Apple, became universal, became international in scope.
It was also used by musicians who indicated that they were returning to the Apple. There was a location I'm sure you're familiar with on 135th Street in Adam Clayton Powell Jr. on the corner called the Big Apple Grill. And they used to do jam sessions there. So that was one of the other ways that people learned about the Big Apple. One of the things that's interesting, though, and I think you wrote about this also, is that uh, uh, Cab Calloway's book was in the library, but at that time they didn't let black people take
That's
books out of the library. So
right.
the majority of people who took the book out were white people. And it's interesting because Barbara Jones, she was at the conference. She is one of the flame keepers for the Lindy Hop. And she was saying that the reason why the Lindy was so popular in Europe is because, again, with the soldiers showing people how to do it. And since the Germans thought that that was counterproductive and the resistance with the younger people, just like some of the things that you see today, would dance the Lindy as a resistance to get away from, the dictatorship of the Germans. And to this day, I think just about every European city you can find someone doing the Lindy, except for Harlem, where it doesn't.
That's right, Tony. And that's actually, you're right. It was a protest. It was an act of protest by these people against their policies and their politics. And you're absolutely right. But there were two things that you touched on that we could also segue to when you mentioned in terms of the different locations in Harlem that use the Big Apple to promote their businesses. And that segues into another story about another heroine of mine, another Harlemite by the name of Gwen Barrett. Gwen Barrett was a young lady born and raised in Harlem. And at a very young age, I think she may have been 21 years old, went to work for Channel 5 in Manhattan and was tasked by her employer with coming up with an idea as New York City was facing bankruptcy to help the city to be able to mitigate the losses that were happening in the tourism industry. And when you mentioned the Big Apple nightclub, there was also a Big Apple bodega. And Gwen shared a story with me how she was tasked with this, and she didn't know what to do. She didn't know how she was going to do it, and her deadline was approaching. She said she was on her way home, traveling across 125th Street on the bus, and the bus happened to stop at the Big Apple bodega, and she had an epiphany regarding her uncle. As you mentioned, again, the second segue to the jazz musicians. Her uncle, Steve Samuel, was a major jazz music producer, produced the likes of Cab Calloway, Dizzy Gillespie, Duke Ellington, and she actually had an epiphany to use the Big Apple concept, and she did. She took it back to her bosses at Channel 5, and that campaign has grown into New York City's official Big Apple campaign for the last more than 50 years. And Gwen Barrett is unsung in terms of her contribution, another Harlemite, her contribution to the Big Apple. And we're going to make sure that our publication, the Green Apple Guide, delves a little bit into people like Gwen Barrett and Cab Calloway and other people who have made those type of contributions that are little known and not sufficiently lauded.
Yeah, I know that at the tourism conference during Harlem Week, we gave her a recognition since no one really gave her that recognition for the work that she did in putting together the first ad for New York City, and New York City wasn't facing bankrupt. New York City was bankrupt. You know, there's something. Someone told me there's a show on, I believe, Netflix about what took place when Gerald Ford told New York to drop dead.
Yes, he did.
I had to research that because um, they were saying, you know, there's a lot of people who were at that time were probably like that. And you're probably talking about me, a lot of the older people who were around at that time. But I have to look at that. But yeah, New York City was in bad shape. And of course, 42nd Street, man, you had to be a sinner to walk down the street of 42nd Street.
Yes.
You know, nothing like it is now, but that Big Apple campaign helped really turn around New York City.
Absolutely, it did, and it could still continue to do that. And we're not done with Gwen, as I said, with the Green Apple Guide. We're gonna. Green Apple Guide is going to be a publication that basically shares a lot of little known history, little known fun facts about Harlem that we want to make sure that the next generation is aware of before that information is permanently lost to history. And there's a lot of information there. We have people like Victor Hugo Green. In his case, he is a little known Harlemite who has people are much more familiar with his work than they are with him, as far as the green, as far as the Big Apple. And then you have people like Cab Calloway, a big name, but there are little known facts that people would like to share, like his liking of gambling. Cab Calloway was a gambler, and interestingly, there's a story, a true story, by the way. His mom was taught piano at the church that they attended in Baltimore before he came to Harlem, and his mother caught him shooting dice on the church steps. And she sent him to reform school. His parents sent him to reform school. His father was an attorney. And they sent him to reform school. Reform school was managed by his uncle, his mother's brother, to try to straighten him out as far as his gambling. And interestingly, later in his life, when he was in Harlem, there's a legend that he had a confrontation with Bumpy Johnson because they had competing interests in terms of betting parlors. And so there's little known facts like that. As a matter of fact, this Friday, October 31st, would have been Bumpy Johnson's birthday.
He was born on Halloween.
And born on Halloween, Bumpy Johnson.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so that's kinds of information we're going to share in the Green Apple Guide. Just little tidbits of information people could consume. Particularly the younger folks are interested in consuming their information in so many bytes or so many words, like on Twitter. So we want to keep it short and sweet, but share a lot of information before it gets lost to history.
Well, I know that the Tourism Board has a small grant to work with seniors, and I'm looking to see, is there some way to incorporate I think we're going to do 4 workshops with seniors and young people to come together on some sort of a project that they can kind of an intergenerational project. It would be great if we could find some way to merge the Apple magazine, the Green Apple magazine, into being one of the projects that come out of those workshops. So I have to look into that and see how that might work.
Tony, we can absolutely do that. As a matter of fact, there is one of the most enlightening. I'll have to get the correct name for it, But during the FDR administration, after the Great Depression, when we were trying to get the economy back on track, former President Franklin Delano Roosevelt actually put out a grant, and he had people, aspiring writers. He wanted to try to retain as much word of mouth, oral history of slavery and Jim Crow, and
Mm.
he fanned out writers all across the country, and they interviewed elderly black folk at the time to get their first person stories about their experience with Jim Crow, and in some cases slavery, because you're talking about the 1930s. So you had somebody 80 years old in 1930, they were born in 1850. So they had a direct recollection of what slavery was like. And the same thing regarding Harlem. You know, we have our elders in Harlem, the oldest generation that reside in Harlem, that have memories of, of Jim Crow, of what it was like at that era, that have memories of the end of the Harlem Renaissance, either their direct experience or experience that they heard from their parents who were grew up or were adults or young people in that generation.
Mhm.
And just to piggyback on what I was saying before, it's an opportunity to record that oral history before it disappears forever.
Mm.
Uh, I published a book last year about Martin Luther King's near assassination in Harlem in 1958.
And Bloomstein's.
That's right. That's right. That's right on 125th Street. And one of the things I was amazed at when I was doing research for the book was there were a lot of people who were very young or young adults at the time who had a recollection of the incident.
Mm.
They had immediate personal recollections of what it was like that Saturday night in Harlem when Martin Luther King was at Harlem Hospital and they weren't sure if he was going to live or die. And what you just mentioned, that grant might be used to be able to reach out to senior centers or other places, churches, where we can reach the older generation and record their recollection of those times.
Well, I'll put you in contact with some of the people who are developing that,
Mm-hmm.
and we have to do something quick because we received the grant at the same time we received the grant for the summit. So the summit took up a lot of the work that we were going to do, and then actually this is the first broadcast since the passing of Lord Williams, who was the CEO of the chamber. So there's been a lot of reorganizing based on that, which is probably another show to talk about that and where it's coming. But it is a good thing that there are young people who have been able to step up and do a number of great things, not only basically for Harlem Week, not more. And the Chamber's board is pretty strong. So um, pretty soon, before the end of the year, we'll have an outline of some of the new leadership there. But tell us, the magazine will be online. Is that correct? It'll be digital.
That's correct. That's correct. The Great Apple Guide will be entirely digital. It will be a monthly publication. And as I said, it will have a lot of anecdotes, a lot of history, one or two paragraphs addressing different subjects, different topics, different people from Harlem's history. It was approximately 100 years ago this year, and that's not really addressed often in the popular, in the wider media. But Harlem became Harlem for Black people approximately 100 years ago, about 1925. It was around that time that the population of Harlem became predominantly African American. And in this last 100 years, the amount of history in Harlem is incredible. You had so many movements, political, cultural, movements. You had the Malcolm X revolution. You had Marcus Garvey. You had Paul Robeson, which isn't addressed very often in terms of his movement to go to the United Nations on behalf of Black folks and petition the United Nations for redress for Jim Crow against Black folk. There's a lot of Harlem history that we don't want to get lost, and we want to bring that, make sure that's brought to the attention of the younger generation, so they can really understand how significant Harlem is. It's a relatively small place with relatively small resources that has had a big impact on the history of the country, and we don't want that lost. And like you said, we want to reach out to those older people and get their memories of those times while we can.
And some of the younger, I mean, it sounds like it's the past, present, and the future as relates to things that what's happening, what happened, what's happening now, and some of the things that will be happening based on where people are looking to go. And I guess even though there are a lot of publications that are out there, this one focusing on tourism, basically that's the foundation of it, but has a lot of information that people might just be interested in as far as knowing about the past, the present, and in many cases the future. Tell the listeners a little bit about your background, Regi.
My background, I'm an author. As I said, I published my second book in February of 2024 on Harlem. It was about the near assassination of Martin Luther King in 1958. And a couple of years before that, in 2021, I published a book about our former and current president, Donald Trump. That's an interesting book. As a matter of fact, that book is that book is 4 years old, actually, this month. And it's a 262-page book. It's pretty intense in terms of the subject. And so anybody who's interested in learning facts about Donald Trump to help them understand where he's coming from in 2025, I'm giving those away. I'll give a link to virtual copies of those books at no charge. Anybody who's interested can reach out to me, and I will send them a virtual copy of it. But
And
I've also
how do they do that, Regi?
they can do that by writing to villageofharlem@gmail.com.
Mm-hmm.
That's villageofharlem@gmail.com. In the subject line, they could put Trump, and I will make sure that they get a 100% free link to that book, which is currently selling on Amazon. But I've also been a journalist. I'm also an activist in terms of advocating for all that is due to Black folks. I endorse reparations, and I'm also just interested in sharing as much as we can with the next generation, by whatever means, to make sure that they carry on the legacy. Because, I mean, let's face it, 60 years ago, there was the Civil Rights Act. The Civil Rights Act, for those who aren't aware, is what legally terminated apartheid in the United States. So if you were born before 1965 in America, you were born into apartheid. This is called Jim Crow. And now there is actually a buzz right now that the current administration in Washington is thinking about terminating the whole thing.
Make America great again.
That's right. Making America great again. I'll put the "great" in quotations. And so the young, exactly. And so when I talk about sharing with the younger generation, that's what I'm talking about. They've never experienced that. They've never experienced open public hostility towards Black people. Where it got.
No, they have, but it's been settled.
Well, I mean, in situations like where people are getting hung or shot.
They got 3 cases of young people being hung right after the Charlie Kirk.
Exactly. And that's exactly the point I'm making, Tony. And that's exactly the point I'm making in terms of making our young folks more aware of our background. So as it's been said, if you don't know your history, you're bound to repeat it. So we want to make them as well aware, as much aware as we can, so they can be on guard and guard against that and push back against it.
Well, again, and the book about the assassination of King. What I mean, what were some of the things that you covered in that? The female who did that was mentally ill, I believe. Is that correct?
Well, that's you'd have to have the book. You'd have to really check that out, because the interesting thing about that is that she was considered to be clinically an imbecile. An imbecile is a clinical term, like a moron. She was considered to maybe have a third grade intellect, but at the same time, according to the record, she was in touch with the FBI. She said it was said that she contacted the FBI and told the FBI they needed to go after King because he was a communist. And so it's like, well, how does somebody, with a third grade mentality write a letter to the FBI and tell them you need to, go after King because he's a communist? That didn't quite add up. And after it was almost like, what's that movie that came out about the guy that got hypnotized to kill the president? I can't think of the name of the movie. But after she,
the Manchurian Candidate,
the Manchurian Candidate, that's the one. And it was like, well, after she was arrested for nearly killing Martin Luther King, she was institutionalized for over 50 years, and she was kept on psychotropic drugs all the time. So, who was really behind it? As a matter of fact, Tony, the night before the attack on King, the Friday night prior, Martin Luther King had a rally on 125th Street, and she showed up, and she showed out. They had to call the police because she was verbally attacking King in terms of his communism and other issues that she had with Martin Luther King. And so she was on the radar of the police. But the next day, there were no police, no bodyguards anywhere in sight. And this woman got close enough to stab Martin Luther King in the chest with a letter opener that Martin Luther King said had he sneezed, it was so close to his aorta that had he sneezed, he would have died. But there was security was there the night before at the rally on 125th Street when she showed up, but nobody was there, 18 hours later when he was doing the book signing where he was nearly murdered.
Sounds almost like Malcolm X, huh?
It sounds a lot like Malcolm X. So this is the kind of history I want to share in the Green Apple Guide. So it's just it's trivia, but it's not trivial. There's a lot of interesting tidbits and facts out there that people can, take a 2 or 3 minute read and learn a lot about history and have more reasons to come to Harlem as visitors to consume all that Harlem has to offer, culturally, commercially, as a community. That's the experience that we want people to have when they come to Harlem. It's great to do the jazz clubs, it's great to do the nightclubs, but we really want you to understand the real history that defines Harlem in the last 100 years since the Renaissance.
Yeah, matter of fact, New York is celebrating its 250th anniversary coming up too.
That is correct. As a matter of fact, and Harlem itself, is celebrating. I'll see how good my math is. Harlem was founded in 1658. So Harlem is more Dutch. By the Dutch. That's correct. And so Harlem is more like 350 years old. And, there's a lot of history there. Particularly, it's interesting the transition that Harlem took from being a Dutch suburb of Manhattan to becoming an international enclave for people of color, for people of African ancestry.
Yeah, the Harlem African Burial Ground, which was discovered not long ago. Showed how the Dutch had two. It was a church. Can't remember the name of it, but there were two burial grounds, one for the blacks and one for the whites. And when things changed and the church moved on, or the development started to change, the white burial ground was excavated and placed in those bodies placed in other areas. But the Africans who actually built much of New York City, uh, and strangely enough, from Senegal and Ghana, which were the closest ports to the U.S., were left there until recently. So there's a lot of history.
Oh, Tony, there's a lot of history, and that segues to another feature that we'll do occasionally in the Green Apple Guide. A lot of people, you just mentioned Senegal. A lot of people are aware of Little Senegal. People talk about Little Italy, and people talk about Chinatown, but there's also a Little Synagogue in Harlem. And
Mm-hmm.
so we'll be writing about that and sharing that. Not only that, but we're going to talk about the how Harlem became Harlem. In the 1920 census, Harlem went from being a community that had a minority of black folk in 1920 to being predominantly African American in 1930. So as I said, that transition happened right around 1925, 100 years ago. But what I want to write about is how that happened, the Great Migration. The Great Migration, when people were leaving in the 20s and 30s, 1920s and 30s, were leaving the South to come to the promised land in New York City and Harlem to escape Jim Crow. It's amazing because that migration included ancestors from slavery from all across the diaspora. So you had tribes from mostly from West Africa, but all the people that were stolen from Africa and made slaves in America, most of those tribes, most of the ancestors of those tribes came to Harlem in the 1920s and 30s, and that's how Harlem became predominantly black. And then there was another migration when during the United Nations, when the United Nations came to New York City, a lot of those African countries, a lot of those Caribbean countries that are represented at the United Nations made their way uptown to Harlem as well and have roots in Harlem. So we also define Harlem as the crossroads of the diaspora because people of color, people from African ancestry from all over the world reside there right now.
Yeah, and as you indicated, many of the leaders who Harlem has always been that type of area that sparked development and creativity uh, and defiance for at least during my lifetime, and I'm sure historically for many years. Uh, so again, Reggie, tell the listeners if they want to have more information about your actually two projects, but the Green Apple uh, magazine. How will they find out about it? I'm going to write an article about it in the Harlem Community News. But how would people get in contact with you if they have stuff that they might want to add or to talk about as relates to what you're putting together?
Absolutely. I really appreciate that, Tony. Yeah, what I'd like for you to do, anybody who's interested in any area, any aspect of what we're doing, is to reach out to me at villageofharlem@gmail.com. That's
Mm-hmm.
villageofharlem@gmail.com. And we are, when, as Tony just alluded to, we are looking, this isn't a one-way street. We're looking to communicate with the community, with the larger Greater Harlem community. Uh, as Tony has pointed out, Tony's uh, uh, one of Tony's driving issues right now is a city within a city. And a lot of people don't realize that the 4 community boards that comprise Harlem, the 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th community boards in northern Manhattan, has a population equivalent to the city of Detroit. And it's highly
Larger than
diverse.
Atlanta and Miami.
Okay, well, I don't want to brag. I don't want to brag, Tony, but it's a massive community, and there's a lot of stories.
Yeah,
There used to be a program back in, I think it's the 50s. They called it the
that
Concrete
was
Jungle, and they'd say
six.
there's a what's that, Tony?
Yes, over 600,000 people in the greater Harlem area.
That is correct. But back in the day, they said, there's 8 million stories in the concrete jungle in the naked city. We want to hear about it. Well, we want to hear your stories. We want to have an interactive relationship with this publication that we're doing. We want to record your experiences in Harlem. Anything that you want to share with anybody who might be considering visiting Harlem, to entice them here, to let them know what's really here. So much more than just music and lights and a good time. There's so much to be learned in Harlem. The Schomburg Center, Harlem Hospital. There's so much fabulous history to be gained by visiting Harlem.
There's a new Civil Rights Museum coming up on 125th Street also.
Exactly. And those are the kinds of things that we're talking about. So we want to hear from people. We want to hear your opinions. We want to hear things that you would like us to investigate and report on. We want this to be an interactive opportunity, again, while we still have our culture and our history fresh in our experience. Oh, and one other thing. We're also, this is also an advertising opportunity. The publication is taking advertising, very, very inexpensive advertising, because that's really not our focus, but we do need to support the effort. But the advertising, we're supporting the advertising by sharing it with every HBCU in the United States. There are over 100. HBCUs collectively have over 300,000 students, and these are tomorrow's business leaders, entrepreneurs, professionals, homeowners. It's a very lucrative market to be able to reach. And so we're going to be able to make, for your few dollars that we're asking for your advertising, we'll be able to give you a pretty good return on your investment. So again, reach out to Village of Harlem at gmail.com, and I'll give you more information on that.
Well, and that's great. And you can also contact the Harlem Tourism Board at gmail.com if need be. But Regi, I'm glad to have you. You got a lot of things going on, a lot of energy, and that's always helpful. And the important thing, though, is that you're just a wealth of knowledge. Your research goes back, and the stories that you have been able to tell and research, it's incredible about this village. So I look forward to seeing some of that in the Green Apple Guide. There's a Green Apple magazine, right?
Green Apple Guide, GAG.
Green Apple Guide. Okay.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And we should we'll probably do a show this time next year to see where we are.
Well, that would be terrific, Tony. But in the meantime, we have a special that we're doing right now, a twofer, so to speak, an advertising special for the month of November and December. One monthly fee for those 2 months for the holidays as an introductory offer. And so we encourage people to reach out to us as soon as possible. We think you'll get a good bang for your buck. And this is a publication. The ad is no good unless people pick up the publication to expose themselves to your service and your product. And so the content that we're going to have in the publication, the types of things we mentioned about Harlem history and Harlem trivia, will be the type of publication we expect people to pick up month after month after month.
Well, again, Regi, we're looking forward to this new project, and looking forward to having you back and give some updates also. We don't have to wait another year before you get on the show. But we want to just put a benchmark to to review and see how those things are going. As far as also the branding of Harlem, the birthplace of the Big Apple, there's a number of things that you're doing, including a statue at some point that may go up to honor Cab Calloway and Red Barrett. So there's a lot that's happening, a lot that's going on, and I'd like to thank you. I'd like to thank Soul City for starting a new season, and look forward to working with you on this project, as well as I'm sure you're going to have some other ideas coming up. You always do. And again, for the listeners from Soul City, we will be here, God willing, just about every Tuesday. So tune in, hear about things that are going on, not only in the village of Harlem, but all over, since this is an online show. We got people listening from around the corner to around the world. So thank you, Reggie. Appreciate your time.
Thank
Reggie
you, Tony. I
and,
appreciate you.
and that will pretty much be it for uh, this week. And looking forward to giving you updates on what's happening with the Greater Harlem Chamber, what's happening with the Harlem Tourism Board, and what's happening with a number of different things. By the time we get back, we'll be actually talking about who will be the new mayor. So a lot of things coming up. Looks like it's going to be a good season, and I look forward to talking with you. This is Tony Rogers, your host for Urbanology, the Art of War, signing off. Thank you.
This is Kia Rogers, and you're listening to Urbanology with my dad, Tony Rogers, on WHCR 90.3 FM New York.